You have worked hard this year, maybe harder than last year. And if someone asked you to describe your financial position honestly, not the number in your account, but the actual trajectory, you would probably say better than it was, but not where it should be by now. You are moving, but you are not escaping. You get a raise, and 6 months later the expenses have expanded to meet it. You pay off one debt, and another appears to take its place. You work more hours, and the gap between where you are and where you thought you would be by this age stays exactly the same width. Sometimes it widens. This is not bad luck. This is not a personal failure. This is a loop, a self-reinforcing feedback system operating exactly as it was designed to operate. George Soros has a name for this. He calls it reflexivity, a system where your beliefs shape your behavior. Your behavior shapes your outcomes, and your outcomes reinforce your beliefs. A circle with no natural exit. A structure that becomes more powerful the longer you operate inside it. He knows this not from theory alone. He was born inside one. In 1947, Soviet-occupied Budapest, a 17-year-old Soros watched the system around him close, option by option, like doors being locked in sequence. His father, a lawyer, told him the truth. Most fathers in that city were afraid to say, if you stay, the system will consume you. Not violently. Quietly, year by year, choice by choice, until one morning you wake up and the life you are living is the only life the system was ever going to allow you to have. Soros left. He arrived in London with $40, no connections, and one conviction that the loop he had been born into was not a permanent condition. It was a structure. And structures, if you understand them clearly enough, can be dismantled. 20 years later, he was running one of the most successful hedge funds in the world. This is not a story about talent. It is not a story about luck. It's a story about a specific kind of seeing, the ability to look at a system that most people have accepted as reality and ask the question that most people find too uncomfortable to ask. Is this actually what I think it is? Or is it something else entirely, disguised as something inevitable? Today, we are going to apply that question to the income trap, not in abstract terms, in the specific, daily, completely normal behaviors that are quietly keeping millions of intelligent, hardworking people inside a loop they do not fully realize they are in. Because here is what Soros understood before almost anyone else. Low income is not a number. It is not a circumstance. It is a self-reinforcing feedback system. And once you understand exactly how the system reinforces itself, you can find the point where it is weakest and apply force precisely there. Let the countdown begin. Before we talk about how to break the loop, we need to understand what a loop actually is. Soros spent 50 years studying reflexivity. The core idea is deceptively simple. In most systems, there is a reality, and there are beliefs about that reality. Standard thinking says the reality comes first, and the beliefs follow. You see what is true, and you form an opinion about it. Soros says this is wrong. In human systems, markets, societies, and individual lives, the relationship runs in both directions simultaneously. Your beliefs shape your behavior. Your behavior shapes your outcomes. Your outcomes reinforce your beliefs. The arrow does not point in one direction. It forms a circle, and that circle, once in motion, becomes almost impossible to stop from the inside. This is why intelligent, hard-working people stay poor. Not because they are not trying, not because they are not trying, not because the system is too strong to overcome, but because the loop they are operating inside is self-reinforcing. Every action taken within the loop produces an outcome that confirms the beliefs that produce the action. The harder you work within the loop, the more evidence the loop generates that the loop is the only option available. Soros watched this exact dynamic destroy currencies, collapse banks, and ruin governments. He also watched it, in a more intimate way, trap ordinary people in financial positions they entered young and never found a way to exit. There are 3 specific loops. Each one operates independently. Each one is, on its own, manageable. But when all 3 run simultaneously, which is the condition most people in low income are actually living in, they form a compound system whose gravitational pull is almost indistinguishable from permanent reality. We are going to take them apart, one by one. George Soros was born in Budapest in 1930. By the time he was a teenager, he had watched the Nazis occupy a city, watched the Soviet system replace them, and watched both ideologies tell the same lie in different languages. This is how things are. This is reality. There is no alternative. Accepting this is wisdom. Resisting this is delusion. He did not believe them, not because he had proof they were wrong, but because he had understood something about the nature of belief itself, that the stories a system tells about itself are not descriptions of reality. They are mechanisms of control. The first loop works exactly like this. When you grow up in a low-income environment, you absorb a set of beliefs about what is possible for people like you. These beliefs are not presented as beliefs. They are presented as observations. This is how the world works. This is what people in your situation can realistically expect. This is practical thinking. And here is the reflexive mechanism. Those beliefs produce behavior. If you believe a certain outcome is available to you, you invest effort in pursuing it. If you believe it is not available to you, you do not. And the behavior or the absence of behavior produces outcomes that confirm the original belief. A person who believes they cannot start a business does not study what it takes to start a business. They do not build the skills. They do not seek the connections. They do not position their resources toward that goal. And therefore, they do not start a business. In this outcome, the absence of a business becomes evidence that the original belief was correct. This is not failure. This is the loop operating exactly as designed. Think about how many beliefs you are currently carrying about your financial situation that you have never examined. Not beliefs you chose, beliefs you absorbed from the neighborhood you grew up in, from the financial behavior of the people around you, from the quiet, persistent message that certain kinds of wealth are for certain kinds of people, and you are not that kind. These beliefs are not true. They are not false either. They are self-fulfilling. They become true because you act as though they are true, and then the outcomes you produce by acting that way provide you with evidence that they were always true. Soros escaped Budapest not because his circumstances were favorable. They were catastrophically unfavorable. He escaped because he had made a specific decision, almost philosophical in nature, to treat his beliefs about what was possible as hypotheses rather than facts, to hold them lightly, to test them against new information, rather than use new information to confirm them. The breakpoint for this loop is not motivation, it is not ambition, it is precision. You identify one specific belief you hold about your financial situation, a belief you have never examined, that you have simply accepted as an observation about reality, and you subject it to the same analysis Soros applies to a market position. Is this actually true? Or does it only appear true because my behavior has consistently confirmed it? What would change, specifically in my daily actions, if I held the opposite belief as a working hypothesis for 90 days? This is not positive thinking. Positive thinking is replacing one unexamined belief with another. This is something harder and more powerful, suspending belief entirely and running the experiment. Soros did this in 1947 with a single conviction. Budapest is not the only possible world. London exists. Capital exists. Opportunity exists. I do not yet know how to access it. But I am treating that as a problem to be solved, not a condition to be accepted. $40. One changed hypothesis. 20 years. The most common financial advice given to low-income workers is this: work harder. Get a second job. Put in the extra hours. The path out of low income is through more effort. Soros would call this advice not wrong, but structurally irrelevant. Here is why. When you trade time for money at a fixed rate, you are entering what Soros would recognize immediately as an asymmetric position, but asymmetric in the wrong direction. You bear unlimited downside risk. You have capped upside. And the asset you are deploying, your time, is the one asset in the world that is completely non-renewable. Think about the mathematics. If you earn $20 an hour and you want to double your income, you need to work twice as many hours. But you already have a fixed number of hours. So you are not doubling your income, you are borrowing hours from your sleep, your relationships, your recovery, your thinking time, and exchanging them for a temporary income increase that produces no structural change in your financial position. Meanwhile, every hour you spend working for linear income is an hour you are not spending building non-linear income. And over 10, 15, 20 years, this is not a small difference. It is the entire difference between a life spent inside the loop and a life spent outside it. Here's the mechanic Soros identified. In markets, there is a specific kind of position called an asymmetric opportunity, the bet where the upside is dramatically larger than the downside. Soros built his fortune almost entirely by identifying these positions and holding them with conviction, while the rest of the market was positioned symmetrically. His most famous trade, breaking the Bank of England in 1992, was not a gamble. It was an asymmetric position held with precision. The downside was defined and limited. The upside was theoretically unlimited. He risked $1 billion and made $1 billion in a single day. Your income structure is the opposite of an asymmetric opportunity. It is a symmetric trap. You put in more, you get out proportionally more, right up until the point where you physically cannot put in any more, and then the ceiling appears. It was always there. You just could not see it from inside the loop. A breakpoint for this loop is not working harder. It is changing what you are deploying. Soros left Budapest with $40. That was not enough capital to operate within conventional markets. So he did something that every person escaping low income eventually has to do. He invested in a non-linear asset, not money, skin. He studied at the London School of Economics. He read Popper. He developed a theoretical framework, reflexivity, that eventually gave him a structural advantage over every other investor in the world, an advantage that compounded for decades, an advantage that no employer could cap, no restructuring could eliminate, and no inflation could erode. The skill stack is not a side hustle. It is the mechanism by which you convert linear income potential into non-linear income potential. You are not adding another job. You are changing the mathematics of your position entirely. If you earn $20 an hour building one skill, adding a second unrelated skill does not make you worth $22 an hour. It makes you a different kind of asset entirely, one that the market has no standard pricing mechanism for, and things the market cannot price efficiently tend to be priced generously by the people who recognize their value. Soros was not the best economist in London. He was not the best philosopher. He was not the best trader. But the combination of economic theory, philosophical framework, and trading instinct produced something the market had never seen before, something that could not be replicated, something that could not be capped. Find the combination, not the single skill, the combination, the place where two or three existing capabilities intersect in a way that the market has not seen in exactly that form. That intersection is where nonlinear income lives. That intersection is where the loop begins to bring. The third loop is the most structural and in some ways the most ruthless. Capital compounds. This is not a metaphor, it is arithmetic. A dollar invested today is worth more than a dollar invested next year. Not because of inflation, but because of the returns that dollar generates between now and then, and the returns on those returns, and the returns on those returns. If you have capital, time works for you. Every day that passes, every night you sleep, every hour you spend doing something other than working. Your capital is producing returns. The asset is active. You are not. If you do not have capital, time works against you. Your expenses continue regardless. Inflation continues regardless. The gap between your position and the position of someone who started compounding 5 years ago continues to widen, regardless of how hard you work, how carefully you spend, or how diligently you save. This is the most demoralizing aspect of the loop. You can do everything right, work hard, spend carefully, avoid obvious mistakes, and still find yourself falling further behind someone who simply started compounding earlier. Not because they are smarter, not because they worked harder, because their capital was active while yours was not. The capital deficiency loop works like this. When you have no capital, you have no ability to take asymmetric positions. You cannot invest when valuations are low because you have no investment capital. You cannot start a business when the opportunity is clear because you have no starter capital. You cannot take time to develop a high-value skill because you have no financial buffer. You are structurally unable to move when movement is most valuable. And by the time you have accumulated enough capital to act, the opportunity has often passed. But there is a more insidious mechanism inside this loop that Soros would identify immediately. When you are operating without capital, you are forced into a perpetual defensive position. Every financial decision you make is a reaction to a pressure rather than a response to an opportunity. The car breaks down and you pay whatever it costs because you have no alternative. The rent increases and you absorb it because you have no buffer that allows you to consider other options. The opportunity appears and you watch it pass because you have no resources to act. This defensive posture is not just financially costly, it is cognitively expensive. Research from a Harvard economist shows that financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth the same way a demanding software application consumes processing power. When your mind is continuously occupied with immediate financial survival, you have less capacity available for long-term planning, creative thinking, and a kind of pattern recognition that allows you to see opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. This is the loop at its most complete. The capital deficiency produces cognitive scarcity. The cognitive scarcity produces reactive decision-making. The reactive decision-making prevents capital accumulation, and the absence of capital perpetuates the deficiency. The breakpoint is both simpler and harder than most people expect. Soros did not wait until he had enough capital to operate conventionally. He operated with the capital he had, in the way that capital could most effectively be deployed at that specific scale. $40 could not buy a position in the London Stock Exchange in 1947. But $40, combined with a scholarship and a job as a waiter, could sustain a student through the London School of Economics. And the LSE in 1949 was producing some of the most rigorous economic thinking in the world. Soros was not waiting to accumulate capital before beginning to invest. He was investing in his own cognitive framework, in his theoretical understanding, in the relationships and intellectual foundations that would eventually make him one of the most effective capital allocators in history. The breakpoint requires 3 specific actions. First, stop the capital bleed. Every dollar leaving your accounts in ways that do not build assets or skills is a dollar that is not compounding. Not because consumption is wrong, but because capital deficiency is the structural problem. And every dollar that stays inside your financial architecture is a dollar that can eventually be deployed. Even $50 a month directed consistently into an income-generating asset begins the process. The amount is almost irrelevant at the start. The discipline is not. Second, identify the asymmetric skill or asset in your specific situation. Not the most prestigious, not the most popular. The one where your existing knowledge and position give you an advantage that others do not have. Your equivalent of Soros's reflexivity framework exists. It is probably not visible to you yet because you are looking for something that looks like conventional success. Rather, there's something that looks like an unfair advantage built from your specific circumstances. Third, build the buffer before the opportunity. The single most common reason people miss the moment when their loop could break is that they have no financial slack. They are running at maximum capacity, maximum expense, maximum obligation, maximum stress, and when an asymmetric opportunity appears, they have no resources to act on it. The buffer is not an emergency fund. It is an options fund. It is the capital that allows you to move when movement is most valuable. In 1969, George Soros launched the Quantum Fund. He had been in London and then New York for over 20 years. He had built the theoretical framework. He had developed the skill stack. He had accumulated enough capital to operate. He had positioned himself for asymmetry. The fund returned an average of 30% per year for the next 2 decades. Not because the opportunities were extraordinary, because Soros was positioned to act on ordinary opportunities with extraordinary precision, but precision that had been compounding for 20 years before the fund ever opened. He did not wait until everything was perfect. He did not wait until he had enough. He did not wait until the loop had fully broken. He acted at the exact moment he had sufficient, not maximum, position to make the action meaningful. This is the part of the story most people miss when they hear about Soros' success. They see the outcome and they look for the single decisive moment, the brilliant trade, the perfect timing, the one insight that changed everything. What they miss is the 20 years of preparation that made the decisive moment possible. The loop does not break in a single dramatic moment. It breaks through a series of small deliberate actions taken consistently over time, each one slightly reducing the loop's grid, each one building slightly more capability and capital outside the loop, until the day arrives when the combined weight of those actions reaches a threshold and the loop loses its hold. Most people are waiting for the conditions to be right, for the income to be high enough, for the debt to be low enough, for the timing to be better, for the risk to be lower, for the responsibilities to be fewer, for the responsibilities to be fewer. Soros would recognize this immediately. It is the loop talking. The loop does not want you to act. The loop wants you to wait, because every day you wait is a day the loop reinforces itself. Every day you wait is a day you accumulate more evidence that waiting is rational. Every day you wait, the cost of beginning feels slightly higher, not because the action is genuinely harder, but because the loop has had one more day to embed itself. The window is not coming. The window is open right now. It is open with whatever capital you currently have. It is open with whatever skills you currently possess. It is open with whatever time is available to you after your existing obligations are met. The question is not whether the conditions are right. The conditions are never perfectly right. The question is whether the action you take today, small, imperfect, insufficient in the way that all beginning actions are insufficient, starts the process of breaking one loop, not 3 loops, one, the smallest one, the one where you have the most leverage, the one that, if broken, begins to weaken the others. Soros broke the perception reality loop first. He changed one belief from a fact to a hypothesis. Then he broke the time-money loop. He stopped selling hours and started building a framework. Then the capitalist efficiency loop broke almost on its own, because the first 2 breaks had been generating compound returns for 2 decades. The sequence matters. You cannot break all 3 loops simultaneously. You do not have to. You have to find the first one, the one with the loosest link, and pull loop. You are now sitting with a picture of your own loop. You have seen, probably more clearly than you have seen it before, how the 3 mechanisms interact, how the belief produces the behavior, how the behavior produces the outcome, how the outcome confirms the belief, how the time trade extends the timeline, how the capital deficiency removes the ability to act at the critical moment. You have also seen the breakpoints. One changed hypothesis, held with discipline for 90 days. Not a belief you chose because it felt good. A hypothesis you are testing because the alternative, the unexamined belief you have been carrying, has already shown you its results. One nonlinear skill, built in the hours the linear income does not consume. Not the most impressive skill. The skill that, combined with something you already know, produces something the market has never seen in exactly that form. $1, then 10, then 50, directed into the architecture outside the loop rather than into the consumption inside it. Not because the amount matters yet, because the direction matters enormously. From the very first day, Soros left Budapest in 1947 with $40 and a conviction that the loop he was born into was not permanent. The loop you are in is not permanent either. It is a structure. You can see it now. You can see where it is weakest. You can see the exact point where a small, precise application of force will begin to dismantle it. The question Soros asked himself on the train out of Budapest is the same question available to you right now. Not how do I escape everything at once, but what is the one belief, the one trade, the $1 that begins the process? Because the loop does not need a revolution to break. It needs a starting point, a single action taken today that is different from the action the loop expects you to take. A single decision that the loop did not produce, that came from somewhere outside it, That decision is available to you right now, not tomorrow, not when the conditions improve, not when the timing is better. Right now, you already know what it is. What are you going to do with it? That is all. Thanks for watching.